It's all in your head. You don't look sick. Your tests are normal. It's probably anxiety. There's nothing wrong with you. Have you heard these words from physicians, family, and friends? If you're someone who has been struggling and swirling through the revolving door of healthcare to find answers about your health, or if you know someone who is going through this experience, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast with Nozicka, a show dedicated to exploring the challenges of living with undiagnosed or rare medical conditions. This podcast explores both sides of the bedside. We will be speaking with patients who have had challenges with finding a diagnosis, along with experts in the field. I'm your host, Nozicka. Please note, I am not a medical professional, nor am I affiliated with any healthcare, pharmaceutical, or device company. I am an entrepreneur, and I am an independent market researcher focused on helping healthcare organizations better understand the patient perspective. The podcast is not meant to offer medical advice, but to merely share the stories and perspectives of podcast guests. Hello, and welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. I am your host, Nozicka, and this is an interesting episode for me. Just a little side note before we get started. I never really knew where this podcast would go. It was something of a calling for me, and I thought, well, wherever it goes, it goes. I want to have a show where I talk with people who are looking for a name for their symptoms or who were successful in finding a name for symptoms. And for those that couldn't find a name, who's out there who could help? And I also wanted to talk to people who are on the clinical side. So I wanted to get perspectives from both sides of the bedside, as I like to say. But never did I think podcast episode number 1 with my friend and SuperDad, Matt Ciciretti, that he'd be coming back so soon and doing a follow-up about his son, Mark, and his son's idiopathic bone marrow disorder. And we didn't really know what it was at the time. Matt was looking for answers for Mark. Mark was continuing to need transfusions and was spending so much time in ERs, et cetera. And things were getting worse in the near term here. And Matt reached out to me and said, could we do another episode? And this is a call for help at this point. And now we're going to pursue bone marrow transplant with Mark, and we need to get out there. And it was a dire call, but I won't give it all away. But our tone for today has shifted a bit, which is a good thing. So, but this was my goal for this podcast to bring hopefully happy news with families, patients trying to find a name for their symptoms, and hopefully give hope to people who haven't gotten there yet. And here we are today. So I am back with Matt Ciciretti. But what's really, really exciting also is that I have Ryan Peña with me, who is from Be the Match, which is the national bone marrow donation organization that we'll talk more about. And let me tell you a little bit about Ryan, and then we can get into our conversation. But I'm just so thrilled to have both of you with me today and doing this follow-up, which is so positive, and really looking forward to it. But a little bit about Ryan. Ryan is a global speaker and marketing leader with NMDP, Be the Match. Some of his accomplishments include rethinking the organization's social media strategy, launching their TikTok presence, rolling out a new digital experience to inspire and drive more potential donors to the registry, which, boy, that is what we're going to talk about today. And recently working with celebrity advocate Jason Momoa on an influencer activation for patients in need. Ryan's current focus at Be the Match includes efforts around driving more people to join the registry, like I said. And he's going to talk with us today and hopefully take some mystery out of what it means to be a bone marrow donor. But Hey guys, it's
Hey,
nice to see you, and Ryan, nice to meet you as well. And this is actually my first podcast with two guests, so that's pretty exciting too.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. So Matt, welcome back. And
Thanks.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about, like I said, you reached out to me saying, can we do another round? I think what everyone would love to know is what precipitated that. Where's Mark today? Give us a little history since we last talked, and let's get into more of the good stuff
Sure.
in the conversation.
Totally. And yet, Laura, thanks for having me back. Thanks for doing this. And Ryan, thank you for being here. I just want to say your organization has just been like a true blessing. I didn't know organizations could provide the amount of caring support that Be the Match has. So they have an advocate for life with me. But yeah, so after our initial podcast, probably about 2 or 3 weeks after that, Mark had a nosebleed that he got hospitalized for. We went to the ER and they could not get it to stop. And the the crazy thing was he literally was like getting ready for bed and he sneezed right before he was going to like right before he laid down in bed, and then his nose started bleeding and it wouldn't stop. And he had to get rushed to the ER, and we were down there and they could not get it to stop. And Mark has had, multiple surgeries, cleft lip and palate. He's had a posterior flap surgery and, his nose, the pipes in his nose don't work really the same way ours do. So when the ER team was saying they feel they need to pack his nose to try to get it to stop, me and their mother were very much kind of skeptical and against that because he doesn't. Your child, like how I'd blow his nose for him, like I know how he winces when he blows too hard, and I told him all that, and I said I really don't think it's a good idea, and then you know, they they ended up, just convincing us that like this is really the thing we need to do now. So they packed his nose, which was an excruciating process. It took about 7 or 8 nurses and aides to hold him down. And we had to leave the room. And I could honestly still hear him screaming my name and his mom's name. Uh,
Oh,
it was really painful just to hear that. So after that, he stayed in the hospital overnight, and then they sent us home the next day. And at within 30 minutes of being home, he took like one sip of water, and then all of a sudden started throwing up massive volumes of blood and blood clots. And like, it was like he filled a sink in the
oh my
bathroom
gosh, Matt.
with,
Jeez.
yeah,
How scary, how scary for all of you. My
I
goodness.
mean, yeah, it was horrific. And so obviously threw him in the car, booked it back down to the ER, took him in, and he was, that was one of the worst nights of my life. I mean, he was aspirating. Basically, what was happening was he was clotting, and then it was swallowing it, and he almost aspirated on his own blood and blood clots multiple times. His mom and I were taking turns until like 5 in the morning, holding his head up straight. He was so tired. He was so weak, holding his head up just so that he could breathe properly. Like we almost lost him a couple times that night, and it was really traumatic.
Wow.
Uh,
And Matt, how old is Mark now?
he'll be 11. He'll be 11 in October 1st.
Time moves quick, yeah, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does. But right after that, so then they were able to, they weren't able to get the packing out, and it was really getting to a bad spot. So they admitted him to the ICU, and they were able to get the packing out. They were going to put they were going to put like a breathing tube down, but
Mm.
one of the doctors was able to kind of pull the packing out through his mouth. It was
Wow.
fortunate. Yeah. He was in the hospital for a week at that point. And after that, that was like the end of May. After that, I was in a really rough spot. I ended up taking 6 weeks off of work and spent pretty much that whole time talking to doctors, seeking out second opinions, or just seeking out other people's opinions. You
Matt,
know,
what was that process like for you? Where did you even start for that?
well, the first thing I did was I posted, and this was like my first real personal post. I posted on LinkedIn what we were going through and that I was stepping away from my job for a while to focus on this. And I got a tremendous amount of support from people, which was great. And a lot of people from our first podcast and a lot of people from that post started reaching out and telling me, things to look into, things to think about. And I took everybody's advice. There was no stone I wasn't willing. If I thought you had something to share that could help, I was calling you, or I was talking to you, or I was setting up time.
Yeah.
Um,
I have to ask you though, Matt, since you're wearing your med survey shirt there, how did your company react to that? Because it can be so hard to tell an employer that you're looking to take a leave or you have to give focus to family temporarily. How did that conversation go? And, obviously it was received in a way that you were off for 6 weeks, but how do you even approach that type of conversation?
well, I mean, my company has been. My company is they're an extension of family, right? And we're small. We're a smaller size company, and they have been championing and supporting me through this entire journey. And really, after explaining and speaking with, our CEO, who I report to directly about what we had just gone through with that last experience, it wasn't even. He offered. He's like, if you
Oh,
need time, you know, we got your back. Like family first. We're all behind you.
wow.
And
I think MedSurvey might be getting a lot of applications in after through this podcast. Yeah,
that's
you
tremendous. Yeah,
you
it's a
don't hear
tremendous.
that too often. That's
No,
fantastic.
it's a
Yeah.
tremendous culture. And, the just love and support that I received from all my colleagues, continue to through the journey it's something I'll never forget. And I'll never be in my mind, I'll never be able to pay back or work hard enough to pay back,
Oh,
uh, what it meant to me to allow me to do what I need to do.
yeah.
Um,
So you took all this time off and now you're really pressing on the physicians at this point
yeah.
for what are we doing here? What does my
Yeah.
kid have? What's the solution? Because transfusions every 2 weeks is not a way to live
Yeah.
for any of you, your family, your other kids.
And it was transfusions every 2 weeks. You know, it was talking with doctors. There were so our hematologist who is like truly loves Mark and truly cares about him and is not just like scheduling the next appointment. Like he's phenomenal. He calls us the second he gets new info and shares it with us. He is very good about putting it in, you know, normal layman terms so that we can process it, and then he'll answer any deeper dive questions we have. He's fantastic. And, so he has kind of seen that based on where things are going, we're probably going to need a bone marrow transplant at some point. And so he had about even 3 months prior, he had checked the database and had told us that there was 2 or 3 matches in there that we could look at. But, he was also like getting us to set up the different, but check boxes that needed to be checked off. Like, before you can have a bone marrow transplant, you have to have a full dental exam, right? Because you can't have any infection when you go in here. So Mark has never really had, because he's so orally averse. He doesn't like people touching his mouth. He doesn't never
Sure.
like scrape his teeth. He's never had like a real, true, dental exam. So we had to go to the pediatric dental group in Philadelphia that's affiliated with our hospital, CHOP. And that was a process in which thankfully I had the time. Like, we called and we were like, yeah, our we have bone marrow transplant coming up probably, and we need to schedule a dental exam. And they said, originally they told us, well, we're booking you out until November. And I was like, no, I was like, that's not going to work.
But the question is, Matt, did he bring his Tigger with him, since Tigger's his guy, right?
Tigger is his guy. He did not bring Tigger to the dental exam, but ultimately, good news, I was able to get that dental exam, which was going to be scheduled in November, for that following Monday from when I called. So I explained to them very nicely the situation we were in, and I told them I don't really, whoever I have to speak to reconvey this, I'll wait on hold. Please get them on the phone. And waited almost an hour, and
Wow,
then they came back and said, "Yeah, we can see you Monday."
that is perseverance, Matt, and all along, Mark is continuing to get worse, and really, it was just a few weeks ago that you contacted me to say, can we get another episode follow up and get out there, because now that bone marrow transplant was the recommendation, now you needed a match. And
and we started advocating
Ryan,
for.
please jump in here in terms of here's this big database in the sky kind of thing. When you hear the database, and what does all that mean? But Matt, you said that it was becoming challenging to find a match, and Ryan, maybe you can explain a little bit, and we'll talk more about Be the Match as an organization, but if you could speak to maybe what makes it difficult for a match to become available.
Yeah, absolutely. And, great to be here with both of you. And just to say a side note, I've been following, Mark and Matt's journey and the family's journey over the past month or so. And, it's been inspiring and also, in some moments heartbreaking, just with what Mark's going through, and also a father. So definitely, can relate in some way with just that constant hope for some good news and some success. And so, I speak on behalf of the thousands of Be the Match employees. Like, Matt's journey and story with Mark is what inspires us every single day. And to answer your question, Laura, the toughest part about the work that we do is that matching, finding a suitable potential donor is very challenging. We've been around as an organization doing this for over 35 years. We've got millions, nearly tens of millions of people on the registry. And, fortunately, Be the Match is, definitely the most diverse registry in the world. And so even with all of that great statistics, if you will, matching is still very complicated. And that is because of some very, I'm going to keep it high level because I'm a marketer. I'm not a doctor, but what we understand, what we know, what the facts are is that, when it comes to matching, it's a common misconception is it's based on something similar to blood type. And that's not the case. More complex than that. So we match based on what's called HLA markers, which are human leukocyte antigen markers. And again, what does that mean for the average person? I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's complicated. And so it does factor in blood type as well, but that's one of many other elements that have to happen. And so, race and ethnicity play a big part in finding the match. The other challenge that we're faced with is, from a society standpoint, our younger communities, our Gen Z communities, the Marks of the world, they're the most diverse population ever. And so, even a Caucasian person has a lot of unique markers in addition to a Black or African American or Hispanic person. And so, race plays a big part into it as well. And getting those individuals on the registry and the masses, it's critical. So it's very complicated to find matches. And the best way at this point for us to ensure that patients like Mark find their match is to get more people every single day on the registry. And so that is my goal, my team's goal. A lot of our goals in marketing is to not just find people and say, hey, get on this registry, but make sure that they're educated, make sure they understand what this registry entails. We're probably going to talk a little bit about that later on. So that way, when they join, they understand what they're committing to, because at the end of the day, it's a person's life that's on the line. And we want those members on the registry to say yes if and when they're called as a potential match. So yeah, it's complicated, but again, just keep in mind that the matching process is way more complex than blood type.
Yeah. What do you think between you and Ryan? What was it about Mark's bone marrow that was unique in that it was maybe more challenging? They're all probably challenging to match, I'm guessing. But what was it about Mark's bone marrow?
I don't know if it was necessarily about his bone marrow. So when you talk about, when our doctors talk to us about matches, they were not talking to us about anything lower than like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 match. And the reason for that is that given that they feel that this condition is not acquired, but genetic in some way, they're a higher level match is like, as soon as you drop below like a 9 out of 10 match, the rates of like a positive outcome drop pretty significantly. At least that's what we've heard. And so it was like we tested his brother, Eric, and he came back as a 6 out of 10 match. Now, there are some hospitals like Johns Hopkins does haploidentical transplanting, and essentially,
Which would mean what, Matt or Ryan? Either of you?
maybe Ryan can.
Yeah, it's essentially close to it's a half match. So this is actually I was going to throw this out as another kind of fact, and this is a good time to do it. But typically what we see with families, as Matt obviously has, Mark's got siblings, mother, father, you would think, well, it's got a good family, there's a chance that there's going to be a match, a pretty good match there. But only 30% of the time does a family have a match for a searching patient in need of a blood stem cell or bone marrow donation. So 70% of the time is when they have to go to an unrelated donor, which is the registry. So it's actually more common to need to find a match outside of your family. And so where haplo comes in, that option is, sort of in the worst case scenario where the patient can't, their treatment is not sustainable. They need to get a transplant ASAP. And there isn't a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 match on the registry or a really good match on the registry. And so going to a haplo, while there's, to Matt's point, more risk factors with it, it ends up being better than not getting a transplant. And so that's a course of treatment. Not ideal. It does have the ability to work, and people have pulled through and survived, and it's continuing to improve too. But of course, when you compare a haplo to a more fuller matched person on the registry, that latter is obviously the better option of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other thing that made it challenging was like there was a couple. So, and Ryan, I'll let you kind of take this, but I'll just set it up. So like when people join the registry, right, their sample is like, the way it was explained to me is it's like a low resolution image of their sample, right? And it gives an indication that it has a potential to be a high level match maybe. But before, just being in the registry doesn't mean that you're confirmed to be a match for Mark. It means that there's a probability that you might. But our hospital had to basically get another sample, and then they work it up and essentially get to look at it from like a high resolution image. And then they can like finally confirm whether it's, what level of a match it is. Ryan, do you want to maybe speak to that bit?
Yeah, I like the low res, high res. I've never heard that analogy before. So I'm going to probably use that because that's a great picture to paint. But
No, I think you guys will be doing a road show.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine with me. Get me out of my basement, but no, that's exactly right. So for those that aren't on the registry, how this works is when you join the registry, you can join online. So you fill out your information on our website and we go through some health screening checks just to make sure, there's no underlying kind of conditions that we need to be, aware of. And you essentially receive a kit in the mail. It's all free. It's all paid for. And it's a swab kit. 2 swabs. You swab the inside of your cheek, both sides with both swabs. And then you send it back. It goes to our lab here in Minneapolis. And that's a low res. That's what Matt's talking about, the low res typing. So when our lab gets it takes about 6 weeks to type the kit. And that gets you into the registry database. So that is once you're officially on the registry, that's because you're typed in that low res kind of perspective. So when you're on the registry at that point, now your name is added to the list of millions of others that are constantly being searched to see if any of the thousands of patients every year that are in need of a match, if you're potentially looking to be like one of those patients' matches. And then sometimes you're waiting for many years. Sometimes you never get a call. That actually happens more often than not because matching is so complicated, like we talked about earlier. But let's just say you're one of the lucky ones and you're called or texted or emailed one day and said, hey, we'd love to talk to you. You've been identified for a patient in need as a potential match. Once you talk to our team, we start to work with you on finding a place local to where you live to get more of that confirmatory typing done. And that is where that high res comes in. So, typically if you're identified, it's confirming that it is great. It's looking good. And most of the time it is confirmed that you're indeed that person. And then you go through a process of getting prepped for the donation. So there's a little bit of a physical that happens. All of this is typically local to where you live. Everything's paid for. And then donation day, again, if you do have to travel for some reason to be at a collection center, we will fly you wherever that is and pay for everything. If you want a partner to come with you for support, we pay for them, pay for the hotel, pay for everything. So that way we take away any and all friction that can come with donation. And it's just really making sure that you're treated like royalty because you're literally saving someone's life. And we want to make sure that we take away any hurdles that can get in the way of that process. And that product, you're done in less than a day. That product then gets hand delivered by a courier to the patient in need within 24 hours. So, and that could be anywhere in the country. So more of an answer than you were asking for, but just to kind of paint that full picture of what happens, that is, still kind of high level, but that's basically what goes into it all.
Yeah, that's amazing, Ryan. And we talked about this a little bit before in our pre-chat where some of those misconceptions might come along and some people might be thinking it's still the procedure where they go into the hip bone to retrieve the marrow. What's that, Matt?
Like they're not doing biopsies to get the bone marrow as much anymore.
Yeah. So what's that like, Ryan?
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't help
kind
that.
Of quell the concerns of people out there who think it's a major surgery, let's say.
Trust me, this is a daily conversation that we have, digitally, wherever we're putting stuff out there, myths and facts, the common question. And unfortunately, the entertainment world doesn't help because they like to sensationalize and making it look a lot worse than it is. And the good thing is 35 plus years of us doing this, things have definitely evolved and changed. So again, statistics, man, here, because that's how we market things. It helps paint the picture. But about 85% of the time, close to 90% of the time, most donations are done through what's called a PBSC donation, which is a peripheral blood stem cell donation. And that's really similar to donating plasma, for example. So most of the donors go through a workup process leading into a PBSC donation where they take 5 days of injections. They're called filgrastim injections. And those injections are leading up to donation day. So on the 5th day, that's actually the donation day. And so what that does is, based on the advancements of science, is that it takes the natural production of blood stem cells that are found in your bone marrow, and it actually puts an extra, like, superhuman amount of it into your bloodstream, into your body. So that allows that extraction to happen through something similar to plasma donation, where you're sit in a chair at an apheresis center, and blood goes out of one arm, goes into an apheresis machine, takes out those blood stem cells that it needs, which is a small percentage of what you're putting out there, and then puts the rest of that back into your body in your other arm. And you sit there for a handful of hours. You're watching usually Netflix or something, and can't move your arms, so they're putting a blanket on you, they're feeding you, you're like treated like king or queen, and then when you're done, you're unhooked. You got this small product that's going to go to the patient in need, and you see this on our Instagram channel all the time. People holding up these bags. Yep, that's life-saving blood stem cells right there. That's going within minutes, leaving that donor and going through it, like I said, a courier taking that to the patient in need. So that's 85-90% of the time is that's the donation process in 2023. Now, there 10-15% of the time, there is still a bone marrow extraction process that will happen with donors. And this is based on, one, the donor saying they're comfortable doing that. But usually that option is presented from the patient's physician and what they're looking for in terms of the volume of product. Sometimes if a certain volume needs to be made for whatever reason for the patient in need, based on the blood disease or the blood cancer that they're being treated for, bone marrow extraction allows for higher volume of extraction than a PBSC donation. So it's more rare, but let's say if a donor is selected for a bone marrow donation going through the hip bone, it's an outpatient procedure. They're under general local anesthesia. They leave the same day. They literally walk out the same day and continue on with their lives. But they don't feel a thing. The extraction takes just a handful of minutes. And then they just obviously keep them there for a little bit just to make sure everything is good, that they're doing well. And then they're released, again, outpatient. And they usually call out symptoms for a few days, feeling like they fell on their tailbone, slipped and fell. Like, that's kind of pain that they have for a few days. And they're just told to take it easy, but they can continue on with their life for the most part, and they fully recover. So
Mark's actually had 3 bone marrow biopsies during this process.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, Matt. Wow.
Right in a room.
That's basically, that's the process. But yeah, so I can't emphasize that, anyone that's looking into this, please do your research. Please, the thing that we do on social, for example, is we're very transparent. We usually just reshare people's experiences because we want people to know what people like them are experiencing. But, just don't go based on one source in today's world, right? Just make sure you do your research and see what really the facts are, because it is a highly misconstrued process, and it's a lot more accessible in 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, I hope that helps a lot of people, because, as you said, certainly media and the movies, et cetera, have sensationalized or dramatized what it means to get to be a donor and being the recipient, that it's this arduous kind of process, et cetera. Now, certainly afterwards is what happens next for the recipient. We could certainly talk about that, what that means, next steps, but it certainly is a way easier process than I think most people would seem to think, myself included. And maybe we could talk a little bit about what makes for a good candidate, or who's eligible to donate, and I guess who isn't. I understand there's age criteria and some other criteria that goes with that.
Absolutely, yes. So our eligible age range for joining the registry is 18 to 40 years of age. Now, you're on the registry until you age out at 61, or if you ask to be removed from the registry, which you can do at any time. But joining the registry is 18 to 40. Now, you're probably wondering, well, if you can be on there till 60, why can't I join if I'm 50, 45, whatever? For me, I'm in my 40s, and that is purely based on science. It's purely based on the research. It's the statistics that show, first of all, a younger donor is likely going to be able to donate a higher volume of product just based on biology. It doesn't matter if you're a healthier 40-year-old than you were when you were 20. At 20 years of age, you just are able to produce more blood stem cells. That's the bottom line. So that's one fact. The other thing is then there's additional risk factors that come as we age. Again, no matter how healthy we are, and again, that volume plays a big factor. So once you're past 40 years of age, even if you're the healthiest person in your life at that point, you're just not going to be able to provide the volume that is needed for a typical patient in need. So, and of course, we're a nonprofit, right? So we have to make sure that we're not just blowing money away on getting people in the registry all the way up to 60 years of age, when half of that, sometimes half of that population is likely never going to get a call. So we, some registries out there nationally might accept you beyond 40 years of age. We are basing our information based on the 35 plus years of us doing this, based on the science behind it, based on the data behind it, and also based on making sure that we can function and provide the best possible outcomes for our patients in need, and also make sure that our donors remain as safe as possible in the donation process. So there's a lot of pieces there, but that is typically what it takes. Of course, we want the ideal donor to be, of good health. Things change too. Someone that joins at 18 years of age at a college recruitment drive might be pretty healthy, but they might not get a call until they're 30. And when you're 30, I remember when I was 30, I was in quite a different moment in health than I was when I was 18.
Sure.
So that's where, when someone's identified as a potential match, that low res thing, once they're confirmed, they go into just a pretty typical physical to make sure that they are in good health, in good standing to be able to go through this process. And there's minimal to no risk factors for them to do this. So we're always making sure that there's equal attention in the quality of, or making sure that the health and the risk factors are as minimal as possible for both the patient and the donor. The last thing I'll say in terms of what is a good, there's a lot of other things, but the main things of a good eligible qualified donor to be on the registry is that they're committed. And I know we kind of talked about this in our private chat yesterday, but commitment is huge. We want to make sure, if someone is just deathly afraid of needles and can't even stand the word, and they have like major anxiety from it, you may want to just really think about this, because yes, you're going to have some needles here and there. If someone's, nervous about it, that's another thing. But if you think about what you're signing up for and the potential to help a person in need and do something that is forever going to change your life for the better, knowing that you literally saved a life, if that outweighs some nerves that you might have, then you may be a good candidate to join. And if you're okay with needles and you get the facts, you understand what this is going to entail, and you're well educated, definitely join. So we want to make sure that people take the time to really think about this, because right here on this podcast, you've got a living human being, Matthew, that's, doing whatever it takes for his son to have a full life. And at the end of the day, what ends up happening is he's reliant on a random stranger out there that has made the decision to join the registry, that swabbed, with their buddies or whatever one day, and now is potentially getting a call and saying, "Hey, you have a chance to save someone. Are you willing to do this?" So that is a very important piece, and that's something that we are constantly working on to make sure people are well educated and informed, so they can make these decisions on their own.
Yeah, it sounds so easy, and it really is easy. But as you said, people need to be committed. So there's a lot of education probably that needs to go on behind people who are willing to donate. Kind of like if you sign on your driver's license that you want to be an organ donor, I don't think you get organ donation 101 and what that really means if it came down to it. So education and that commitment is really, really important. Matt, what
Oh, no,
did you
yeah,
want to say?
yeah, we had, like I said earlier, 3 matches that were in the database that our doctors were looking into, and they came back almost right. Like once we're moving. We need to find a match. We're going to move forward with bone marrow transplant. 2 of them came back and were either not interested or not available anymore, uh, which was scary. I don't know why, right? I know that I know that some of it is their health might have changed from when they joined. They might not have just been able to get in touch with the people. Contact info could have been wrong. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but as Ryan said, I mean, if you're in the database and you're a match for someone, you're going to save someone's life. So it's a very serious decision. And there was the fear that it creates as a parent to hear that, you had right now you got 3 shots to kind of save your son, and 2 of them are dead in the water right out of the gate. Creates a lot of fear and anxiety, which is what got me to start really crying for help on social media. Just spread this message. My son needs a donor. It took a long time to get the other one in, and I don't even think the other match that was in there was the one that they're going with. I think a new 1 or 2 new ones popped up over the past 2 months. And so somebody's efforts drove my son's donor in, and fortunately they responded and they sent their sample to get worked up for the high res image, and they've gone through that pre-testing. And so we are in a spot where we know we can move forward now, but yeah.
I just want to say, I'm glad that well, I'm not glad, actually. I should rephrase that, because this is really how I feel. Like it's sad to hear that, you had 3 potential matches and 2 weren't able to donate or weren't able to move forward for whatever reason. I'm glad that, that we're in the situation that we're in now, where we've got someone that's moving forward, which is great. But, another piece of the education is also kind of what I referred to earlier. You join, maybe when you're 18 or 20 or whatever, and then you get a call and you're in your upper 20s or 30s. You think about how different your life is at that point. I mean, you potentially could have started a family, you are working a full-time job, et cetera, and your life is very, very different typically. And so to kind of take a step back and remember why you joined and how different your life is now and the amount of commitments that you have, we totally understand and appreciate that there's a lot more going on, a lot more baggage, if you will, but that doesn't change the importance of the need and the commitment. And so I think, again, people that are thinking of joining, think about that as well. Your life is going to likely be in a different place. And again, I can't emphasize that. I'm not trying to steer people away. I want to make sure people understand that that's where we come in. We're not just the registry that is facilitating these transplants and facilitating these matches. We're also the registry to make sure that we take away those concerns that you have, those realities that you have, and make sure we find a path that makes this work. So, for example, if your job doesn't pay for the time that you have to take to go get your physical or to do the donation for a day, if for whatever reason they're not willing to allow you to take PTO or whatever it is, we will reimburse you for that time out in your job. Like I said, travel expenses, none of that comes out of your pocket. Anything associated with donation doesn't come out of your pocket. And we have people that will work directly with you every single day if needed to make sure that you feel completely taken care of. So you can just focus on doing this thing that, again, is a huge thing. That is probably the biggest thing you've ever done in your life. So I know, again, putting on my marketing hat and thinking about all the things I'd love to say here, but in this situation, I think it's so important with this conversation because we're living it right now. This is actually happening with Mark and Matt and his family. And so what better of a time to stress the importance of making the decision, but also staying committed and not being if it's people that are just saying no because they just have too much going on, ugh, just
Yeah.
wish you would think more about that,
And, I'll just add, I had reached out to Laura about doing a follow-up as a cry for help because we had met with his doctors and I had asked, like, without any responses or hits on a match, I had asked very point blankly, like, how much time do we have to like mess around and wait for a match? And my heart hit the floor and put a hole in it when he said probably 2 to 3 months. And I was like, what does that mean? And it was about 2 to 3 months before transfusion as a therapy starts to run the risk of getting rejected, or he has been over transfused and there's a higher risk of rejecting a bone marrow transplant at that point, because too much blood transfusions can increase your risk of having a more negative outcome with bone marrow transplants. So after that meeting, obviously, Laura, I was reaching out to you because I was reaching out to anyone I could talk to and be the matches, called Rebecca. She was like, all right, here's what we can do. Let's start doing this. She set us up with their patient support services also, which is an incredible resource. I mean, they offer counseling for family members and even our son, like our other son, Eric, who's watching his brother go through this and doesn't quite understand. He's 8, so he sees what's going on, and it was just, I wouldn't wish that period of time on my worst enemy to have to go through that. The thought of the fear that 3 months from now, the clock could run out, and now I'm watching my son just fade away, like, because nobody could do anything. Like, I just can't. So when we got the call last week, it was just, it was the best call I've ever gotten in my life. It really was.
That video, Matt, that you put on LinkedIn, short, but boy, did that make a point at how emotional it is. And you've been waiting for a little while, and you've been watching him, like you said, to kind of fade away for a while now. And he's a little boy with an amazing spirit. And I will work to make sure that folks who see this video and hear this podcast get a little flavor, a peek of what Mark is like. But this has been like your own version of a very suspenseful Netflix series. As it is, and wondering, well, what's going to come next? And I certainly was just over the moon when you sent the text message saying that you had a match, and I know so many people because you are so well loved and respected in your circles, and it was exciting for me, but I can't even imagine how just overjoyed your family was and continues to be.
Yeah. You got to celebrate. You got to celebrate every milestone, right? And this was one of the bigger ones for now, in that for the first time in about a year, we actually have like a real sense of hope that it's not unknown. We know the issue as best as science can right now. And now we really have a plan to move forward. You can wrap your head around things when you know what to expect. When things hit you out of the blue or shrug shoulders, it can create a lot of anxiety.
What do Mark's doctors expect for the transplant? What will it actually do for Mark?
Well, I mean, ultimately it will. So I think understanding kind of what happens prior to the transplant, Mark's going to have to undergo the prep for the actual procedure himself, which will involve chemotherapy and some light radiation. And in layman terms, they're basically wiping out his immune system and like eradicating like everything that's already in there. Right.
Yeah.
And then because that's really kind of the issue. The issue is that like his bone marrow is depleting and not, it's not producing the cells he needs, which is why his bloodlines, his bloodline counts are off. So by getting rid of that and replacing it with someone else's, he should have normal blood production, right? And it should eliminate, if everything goes according to plan, he maintains normal platelet levels, normal red blood hemoglobin levels, his neutrophils are good, and he gets to live a life without the constant fear of where are we? Is that is he bleeding? Is it a cut? What is this? Why is he bruising? Why is he sick? Like he'll get to live a much more fulfilling and rewarding life.
And how do you think as a family you'll prepare for this part of the journey?
So that is what we're working to figure out, because there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, it's tough. He's got a brother, he's got step siblings, he's got 2 homes. I mean, and it's like it's going to be hard pressed to figure out. I mean, if he's living in the hospital for 3 months or longer while they wait for the grafting and the bone marrow to like the cells to start kind of actually producing and doing what they need to do. And he's not going to, I can tell you right now, he's not going to be in there alone. And neither one of us, we all just went through COVID, and a lot of us lost people in the hospital that you didn't get to say goodbye to, my father-in-law included. And there is no power on this earth that would keep me away from my son when he's in that situation. Nothing. I don't care. So we'll figure it out, but you bet your mom and I are going to be right by his side. And I don't know what the logistics are. If we can take turns 1 week on, 1 week off, right? Like me there 1 week, her there the next. I don't think he can, because they have, during this period, they have no immune system. And the highest cause of death is actually, what I'm told, around infection, right? Like if you get even a mild cold, you don't have the immune system to fight it off, and it can kill you. So that's the biggest fear. So that's why there's this long isolation period as well. So I can't imagine he's not going to get to see his brother for a couple of months, because his brother's a normal kid that goes to school, and schools are like petri dishes for disease and viruses. So he's not going to get to see his brother for a couple of months. We're going to have to work through that. And I doubt that if who's ever with him is going to be able to like leave and go out into the real world and then come back without a significant isolation period of their own. So we don't know. There's with the alleviation of one anxiety, there now becomes another, but this one is like, it's more frustrating than it is fearful, right? We just got to figure out what we're going to do. And there's a lot of moving parts. The anxiety we just got over was like, is my son going to be alive in 3 months or 6 months? Right. And that is, while there's still risk with the procedure, it's not a slam dunk of survival. What we're hearing from the team of doctors is it's a very, very good. They really, really like the odds, like that this is going to be what he needs and we're going to be in a good spot. So that fear's been lessened. And now it's more of this fearful frustration of like, how are we going to live life while this is going on? It's a lot. And we don't have the answer.
It's definitely a roller coaster from 1 minute to the next. But Matt, are you still waiting to know if this donor is confirmed or not? Or is this a go?
It's a go. We're looking at it seemed from just off the cuff preliminary conversations with his hematologist, likely by the end of October is what they're thinking. I am, part of me is pushing. Mark's favorite holiday is Halloween, and he missed it last year because he was in the hospital, and it broke my heart when he was like asking, is it almost Halloween? And I was like, yeah, bud, it is. And then he was hospitalized through it. So I'm hoping that maybe they do it November 1st, and he can go do Halloween, but probably not. In which case we might do Halloween a little early for him, but they're talking about towards the end of October.
Yeah. Well, if I had to guess, in your little neighborhoods where I'm sure they all know and love Mark, I bet you they would do a special trick or treat day just for just for Mark. Hey, if I was there, I would do it for sure. But yeah, but Matt, what I know about you, you will figure it out and you will lean on all of us who are out there standing behind you. And I think you are a man of faith, if I recall as well. So I definitely think that 100% you will get through the process. You'll get by with a little help from your friends, as the song goes, if I recall correctly.
And I'd just like to say, like, I'd like to give a couple examples of just from putting this out there and sharing our journey, like the types of people that have presented themselves to me for support. So first, obviously, I connected with Be the Match. Rebecca Garber reached out and has been so available and willing to help. And she's connected me with Clifford Ackerman. He's my case manager. I love Cliff is phenomenal. He's one of the best guys. Connected me with Ryan, connected me with a patient support team. Like, Rebecca is an angel on the earth. I honestly, but then there's so many people. I've had so many people reach out to me. I mean, you've seen the reshares and the comments on the LinkedIn posts, right? And that's beautiful in itself that the message is getting out there. But a lot of people have gone through the same thing. A lot of people have, like, I've had parents reach out to me and say, hey, we went through something similar, or, I lost my child years ago because of something similar. If you ever need to talk, I'm happy to talk. And I took a lot of people up on those offers because I wanted to hear their perspective. I wanted to hear their thoughts. I wanted to see if they could prep me for what might be coming. There was an awesome family in North Carolina that they had something very similar, and they got me really thinking about, is bone marrow the right approach, or should we look into immune suppressive therapy first? And our doctors were still not quite sure about it. So after my conversation with them, I had a ton of info to go back and really kind of force a strong discussion with the doctors to just sell me one way or the other. And they were able to really kind of do that for us. Somebody that I knew in middle school saw my post, reached out, and connected me with a friend of theirs who had gone through a similar journey for their father. And this gentleman has been probably one of the most critical people I've connected with in this journey. I am very much I am not an analytical process driven person. I'm very emotional, and I speak at, he would talk to me. I've spoken to him at least 5 or 6 times, and he's helped me work on questions, strategies to speak on, what to say to doctors, how to say it to them, what info I have, what info I don't have. He has just been such a mentor on how to go through this process. I honestly, without him, I don't know if I would have been able to have navigated this as effectively. And if you want to talk about, faith, to me, that is a clear example of God putting someone in my life that I needed at that time. There is a family in Marrow, Spain, whose 9-year-old daughter has been sending messages to Mark and it is the most beautiful thing. And every Monday, she reads a few chapters of The Wizard of Oz for Mark, because she knows that Mark has transfusions on Tuesday, and then he gets to listen to them.
Oh my gosh, Matt. Matt, I just got goosebumps with that. That
It
is
is the
so
most
incredibly sweet and thoughtful. Oh
beautiful
my
thing.
goodness.
It is the most
Ah,
beautiful thing. And the little girl Sylvia is so sweet, and her mom is so kind, and they have just so many people like that have just taken Mark's and us and kind of put us in their life. I get messages all the time. People are praying for us. This one lady I just received that she reached out and said, "Do you mind if I send Mark mail so he has something to read and hold?" And I just got her first letter yesterday. I had it sent to the office, and it's just so sweet. Like, you know, we're conditioned to think that the world's a terrible place, but guess what? You can't convince me of that anymore. There are so many kind people out there, so much love, so much support. And when you receive it, it inspires you to give it back as well. So I can, that's why I said at the beginning, be the match as an advocate for life. And I'm going through this now, but there will come a time where I am devoting myself to paying back what we received.
It just goes to show you that when you open your mouth, you never know what you're going to get back, and you have to ask for these things, and it's okay to ask for help. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to burden people with my issues," but you never really know what you're going to get back, and the blessings that you will get back from people. I have a friend who had some type of myeloma a few years back, and I said, "This will not define you. It will define what you do next." And I think that's probably, Matt, what you will find, or any of us would find, when we see ourselves and put ourselves in these kinds of situations, or these situations are handed to us, whether we like them or not, making your message, as I like to say. And I just think it's been just amazing what all the outreach that you have done, and all the outreach that you've received back. And I like to talk a lot about the silver linings. And we talked about the silver linings, I think, in our first podcast episode. But Matt, what's the silver lining here? And Ryan, if you have a silver lining moment to offer here, that would be fantastic too. But Matt, what do you say? What's the silver lining here?
I mean, the silver lining for me is one, personally, I have really found, I have been just overwhelmed, like I said, with how much kindness is out there, and how we are. These things feel so much worse when you live them in a silo, and when you feel like you're kind of alone in dealing with it. And, I didn't realize how many people were available to speak to, or how many people were willing to help. And it's not just emotionally, right? Not just emotional support. There have been a lot of people that I've spoken to have given me true actionable things that I can follow through with. And, that, I feel that's put us in a better spot today than we were, obviously, back in May, but also that maybe that we would have been now, had I not had access to these people. So silver lining is, I found true advocates and warriors and angels for Mark in this world that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are always so gracious and grateful, and you're so good at expressing that as well. Ryan, how about for you? And maybe also you can talk a little bit more about how people can help, and beyond donation, for those of us who don't fit into the age criteria What can people do to help? Because you certainly are out there with a message, but certainly open to your silver lining moment if you have one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not mine. It's our mission, and it's really around the fact that every single person, every single person has the power to save a life. Now, that's just a fact with our mission. Like if you are looking for something that's bigger than you, and the thought of that heavy thought, that crazy awesome thought of being able to save a life is something that is interesting to you, which I think it would be to a lot of people to really think about that, it's possible. Now, yeah, we've been talking a lot about, the kind of the more direct way of doing it, which is you actually going through and joining the registry and being a donor. But as Laura, as you alluded to, there's a lot of other ways that you can be a part of our mission, and they're just as important because as we, talk about earlier in this conversation, the awareness that is needed, the fact that, Matt unfortunately had to go through this with his son to learn about Be the Match, didn't know about it before. That is the reality, unfortunately, with a lot of people out there. They're not aware of it until they unfortunately have to be aware of it. And that shouldn't be the case. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to support the mission. Getting on the registry, definitely one of those ways if you're eligible. But like I said earlier, anyone can be a part of our mission. Anyone can help save a life. So you can also donate financially. We are a nonprofit, as I've mentioned many times before. So we have, as was talked about earlier, there's a lot of resources that we provide for patients, for donors, making sure that the donation process is completely covered for them, but also getting on the registry costs money as well. And so, we definitely, any donation helps because it covers any and all expenses that are associated with the work that we do. So that's the second one. You can also fundraise. So if you're not looking, if you're not able to donate financially, you can start a fundraiser and get other people in your community to donate. So that's another one. If you're an expecting mother, you can donate cord blood. That's not talked about as much as it should, but that's another area where cord blood donation are very rich in blood stem cells. And essentially that product gets thrown away after pregnancy. It's part of the umbilical cord blood. So you can donate that. That's another one. And then the other 2 or 3, I think there's 7 total. You can just get involved, just being a volunteer, signing up to become a volunteer in locally in your area, or just volunteer however you can with Be the Match always helps. You can just simply sign up for email updates, which provides you with paths of different things that you can engage with. So that's another thing you can do. And then finally is just shop on our Be the Match store, buying some of our merch. Actually, 100% of those proceeds, or I think the majority of those, goes to our cause. And so that's another way that we raise some funds as well. So there's a lot, really. And again, whether you're 16, 70 years of age or 30, you can be a part of our mission. And again, that silver lining is the fact that throughout all of that, you can help save a life. And I'm just going to end with this too. Matt, this morning, I'm not joking. I was walking my 11-year-old to school and we were talking about you because I was talking about my day. And I showed her your video on LinkedIn from last week, because I obviously explained what was going on. And she, my 11-year-old, was like, wow, that's really powerful. I mean, she knows what we do here. She has that kind of knowledge, but I mean, I'm showing this to an 11-year-old. I want every single person, if you are willing to be more vulnerable than you already have been, Matt, I want every single person out there to see just that video of that roller coaster of emotions in those 30 seconds, to see what someone has to go through and what's possible for that person and their family, thanks to people that are on the registry and that are thinking about joining. That's the kind of awareness we need. So grateful for, like you said, Laura, for Matt making his message and getting that message out there. You're doing what I would do as a parent. Any parent, right, would just do whatever it takes for their kid, but you're also in turn helping people, helping other patients in need as well. And so we're obviously endlessly grateful for the awareness that you've raised for our mission too.
It's been, I mean, it's a reciprocal thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Without you, there's no mission, right? Screaming in the dark. So you guys have been a huge part of amplifying it, and so supportive. It's I'll never be able to put into articulate words how dedicated to your organization I have become over just the past couple of months. So thank you and everyone that you work with.
Absolutely.
Well, my silver lining is that never in a million did I think again when Matt and I met at a conference last year. And I think we just sort of reconnected after the conference and we were kind of exchanging notes from a market research standpoint. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. How does that sound to you? And then when I talked about the premise of the podcast, he said, well, I have a son and here's the situation and we don't have a diagnosis. And I thought, oh my gosh, some divine power came along and said that I need to meet Matt. And again, he's been so generous and helping me out too and being my first podcast guest. And never in a million years could I have thought that we'd be this far along doing a follow-up and him introducing me to Mark and allowing me to be a part of Mark's world. And I am really grateful. And I do hope that more eyeballs are on videos and ears are on podcasts and your message and Ryan, your message. And I hope that more and more people consider bone marrow donation. And Ryan, what's the website for Be the Match?
Yeah. You can learn about everything that we talked about today through bethematch.org. If you, I don't know if you'll have this in like the podcast notes or anything, but I can also provide, a more direct link to learning about getting on the registry and also all the other ways to join. So it can make it really easy for those that want to look at any descriptions or podcast descriptions. But yeah, bethematch.org will get you wherever you need to go. You can register for getting on the registry there. You can look at volunteer pathways, all of that stuff. So
Actually,
just go there.
Rebecca set me up with a page for Mark that Laura can share the link, but it's the team name Mark's Marrow.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
That's great.
I love that. Yeah, we will put all of that in the show notes. So as we wrap up here, any parting words here from either of you?
No, just I'm so grateful I've been able to have this positive podcast. I'm grateful for all the support from both of you and everyone out there who has reached out and prayed for us and talked to us. And I'm so grateful. So thank you to everyone.
Well, thanks to you both for spending time with me today on the podcast. So that is another episode, compelling episode, educational episode. I have learned a lot. Hopefully all of you have learned a ton from Ryan and Matt. And please donate. And if not donating Marrow, please consider all of those other 6-7 opportunities that you can jump in on with Be the Match. And if anyone has questions or words of encouragement for Matt, can people contact you some way, or would you like them to just contact you through me, maybe through my email?
Yeah, I mean, best way to get me is on one of my social medias. LinkedIn is my most open. So if you find me on LinkedIn, it's basically linkedin.com/medsurveymatt.
Survey Matt. Okay, I like it. How about through Mark's page? Will Mark's page through Be the Match have some type of portal?
Yeah. Yes, you can send messages. You can, if you donate, you can leave if you financially donate, you can leave a message.
Okay.
I'm responding back to people there as well. So
perfect. All right. Well, we will have all those links again in the show notes. And this has been a fantastic episode. Thanks to you both. Thanks all for listening to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. I'm your host, Laura Nozicka, and I wish all of you well and get out there and support Be the Match. Thanks again and stay well.
Oh my goodness, that's a wrap on another compelling story. Thanks for listening to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. If you would like more information about today's guests or to find out more about Laura, me, go to desperateforadiagnosis.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow show updates and healthcare news on the podcast's Facebook page. If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions, advice, or suggestions for our guests, please email me at lauramarie@desperateforadiagnosis.com.